here with Serge Belet, who is the head of exhibitions at the Canadian Centre for Architecture in Montreal. Welcome to the Bibliophile.
Hello, Nigel.
We're here to discuss the exhibit that is currently on at the centre called 125 Kilos of Books. There are perhaps about 20 or 30 books altogether that we're looking at.
Yes.
Over a period of about 500 years.
Yeah, the Vitruvius treatise we present is dated circa 1486. Okay. And the latest book are, I guess, the œuvre complète of Foster, Piano, Botta, and the SML Excel by Koolhaas, so that's like 20th and 21st century.
One of the things that is so interesting and fun about the exhibit as I walk through it is the contrast between the huge books that are a meter by a meter, if not larger, and then the smaller, 4 or 5 centimeter, no, maybe a bit bigger than that, books. What I find interesting is that the huge books are by the architects, and the teeny weeny little books are for the builders. And my sense is that the architects may have the big, grandiose egos, and the builders perhaps not the big egos, but they're the ones that have to take these grandiose ideas and make them practical.
Architects, big egos. Funny you think about that. This is an exhibition that we are presenting during the Year of the Book, UNESCO, Montreal. One of the concepts, one of the ideas that Gerald Beasley, who was the curator of the exhibition,
Gerald Beasley, yeah,
was to talk about this idea of grandeur. He's using this word grandeur. Grandeur meaning the size, but meaning the prestige, meaning the elite status,
the value of such documents. So Gerald was for many years the head librarian and associate curator at the CCA library. He's now the director of the Avery Fine Art and Architectural Library at Columbia, New York. So he has a long history of relationship with books. He's fascinated by the concept of how do you put a whole building or a huge theory of theories in the printing matter. How can it fit? The story of the building, the recording of what went into the building.
Exactly.
Almost like an accompanying piece to the building.
Almost accompanying piece to the building. I mean, in the show, we're presenting the first published print of the Vitruvius treatise. That's the 1486 book about architectural treatise, one of the most important one in the history of architecture.
Vitruvius?
Yeah. We have an album by Boisseret where we show some drawings of the Knoll Cathedral. And they're huge drawings. I mean, they're probably 80 centimeters by 50 centimeters. Beautiful drawings, showing elevations, showing sections.
Are these reductions of the original drawings, or would they be the same size as the original drawings?
This would be the same size of the original drawings, but I would not. But some of them, it's the original size.
Sure.
And because the concept of architecture, it's always dealing with, of course, space and scale. You give the idea of scale with the human body, for example.
Yeah, anatomy books are big as well.
Exactly. That's another type of big books, are anatomy books.
And that's because you really want to show the detail.
At the real scale.
At the real scale.
It's not one-to-one.
No.
But sometimes you can decide to show a detail one-to-one, but you want to show the drawings at a certain scale, so the relationship between all the elements, which is part of the architectural language, is proportionate.
Exactly, yeah. So if you've got something that's tiny, that's important, and something that's really big, that's important, you can't show the true ratio in the difference between those sizes unless you do have a certain size to work with in the book.
Exactly. So very quickly the printers, the publishers, the architects had to incorporate some devices in their books. I mean, We have a giant books about this loggia in this gallery at the Vatican, and that you see in the first gallery, in the empty room before the octagonal gallery. And the page unfolds over 2 meters because the goal was to represent the whole gallery with all the arches and all the detailing. So you need to add within the book this kind of place that unfolds.
So it's to try to convey the true scale.
Yes. And all the elements which are put together make the architecture.
And that would be the primary
That's
objective.
one of them.
Clearly, these are beautiful works of art in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I suppose that the architects would want the book to do justice to the building.
Exactly. It's also a way to control how they're distributed and who's reading them.
In other words, a big book would be difficult to transport and also expensive to purchase. So only a certain... Is that what you're
Exactly.
getting at?
So you kind of control of who your reader are going to be.
And why would you wish to do that?
I guess it's maybe sometimes to keep your work as part of the prestigious work and an elite.
So you don't want too many people to copy it, you mean?
There's that also. And maybe not too many, maybe you don't want that many copies of it in the libraries. Or if you want them in the libraries, maybe you want many of them, but you want them so large that they take their own space in the library. So you're going to be these large books that nobody can fit somewhere, or that libraries are going to be custom made for. Therefore, your title, your book, has this kind of prestige.
So you could only find it in the libraries rather than on every person's book.
Or in the libraries of these, patrons of the art.
The people that are rich.
What's interesting is actually this notion of portable format, almost the paperback format that you talked about, the builders. And actually, Gerald put them in this section that he calls portable computers. And there's a lot of irony because, of course, it's not computers because they're dated, they range from 1600 to 1700. But in the way what they are, and that's, I guess, where he links them with computer, they carry data. They carry building rules, they carry rules about building that you can have, that you carry in your pocket when you're building.
That you need to refer to
yes.
as you're on the site.
And also we have an 18th century guide of Athens, how do you say that?
Athens, yeah.
Athens. And we have
Antiquity, yeah.
The Antiquity of Athens. So we present the 5 kilo version, which is the original, and then we have next to it the travel version, which are the short, small, almost paperback size books. So of course at some point there was a wish and a need to convey this information to a larger audience, and also to have this information travel, so people can have it where they're on site.
Why did you choose 125 kilograms of books as the title of the exhibit?
I think there's an irony. It's ironic and not ironic. It's true, it's kind of a catchy title. I mean, we're showing some historical pieces, some really unique books. We put them together under this title, 125 kilos. So this is kind of, that raises question. And actually this figure is the actual sum of all the weights of each book in the show. Kilos was stronger than dimensions for some reason, because the kilos refer to the sum of all that. The dimension was more abstract, even more.
Yep.
But that kind of conveyed this idea of big and grandiose and heavy.
And weight,
the irony,
weighty.
I think,
Yeah.
and the irony, I think, is in a way we're presenting these books also as objects. So we talk about contents, of course, but it's also as objects. So the title kind of refers in an ironical way to the objects themselves.
Which it's interesting because of the fact that the architects made buildings which are objects. So they see the book as an object that describes the building that's an object.
Yeah, and when I say we present them as objects, I mean we still are totally in awe in front of these books and their contents, of course. They're real treasures. And
well, they're breathtaking. There's that one there.
This is a Boisseret book.
It's the architectural drawings of a cathedral in Cologne in Germany.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you see, I mean, the page we've opened, I mean, you see there's a huge, it was quite extraordinary to put it together. It's a book that you cannot manipulate on your own. You need at least two people. So to present this book opened, there was huge thinking of how do we put it together. You know, there's this special plexi folded, and then this almost invisible cords that hang it opened. It's we use the concept of this boat in a bottle.
Yes.
So
funny, you look at that huge book, and you think that books prior to being on paper used to be on great big slabs of stone. Mm-hmm. The stones obviously weren't as portable as paper, yet here they're using the weight and the size of the book first to provide true scale, but also to inhibit portability. As you said,
yes.
It's different versions of the same book, that a smaller version could be transported, but obviously the reason that they put the big book together was the accuracy of the scale, but also the fact that they would probably wish that book, the big version, to stay put.
Yeah, they're massive books, and they convey this idea of this grandiose architecture. Mm. We present in the exhibition 2 photographic albums, the Third Lodge in California. They were made for the owners of this huge residence in this beautiful park as kind of survey of their own house and the house in its landscape.
Got an emotional value
yes.
as well, I would think, for anyone that owns it, lived there.
Totally.
One of my favorite books on exhibit is Thomas Hopper's Designs for the Houses of Parliament in 1842. Hopper didn't win the contest. I assume there must have been a contest.
Yes,
and he didn't win it, but he may have been a bit ticked off that he didn't win it, and wanted the world to know that this was what he had designed, and here it is. Exactly.
What happened to so many architects where, there's so much energy and skills and ideas that are developed for all these competitions all over the world.
And they don't want it to lie dead.
Exactly. Yeah. So then you use the publication to keep a record of all these ideas you put together. Sometimes that's how you will be known. Some architects have hardly built, but were very famous with their drawings. And some of their projects were so influential. I'm thinking we've done a show about Cedric Price, a British architect.
Cedric Price.
Where he had this amazing project, the Fun Palace, that was never built.
What was it called again?
The Fun Palace.
Fun Palace?
Yes. And wonderful idea of multi-purpose space where we would have cultural activities, no specific sites. He did these beautiful drawings and all these analyses of usage in the 60s.
And in the 1960s?
Yes, in the 1960s. And it happened that the Pompidou Center architects were highly influenced by this extraordinary architect. You see, for architects to publish their work, it can have a real big impact. That's why,
despite the fact that it didn't come to fruition exactly. In reality. It's a work of imagination, though, isn't it? In a way, it's like a work of to start with. It's an idea. It's a fiction that's being put into writing.
And I think that's something we try to convey at the CCA. Is also the importance of ideas, and in our shows we try to convey how influential, how important the ideas are, whether they've been built or not. It can still help us understanding the cities, realizing where we live or where we'd like to live. It's almost as important as if it's not built, if it's built. One of the last vitrine we do in the show, again, it's a bit ironic. Gerald wanted to put together a couple of œuvres complètes that are not complete yet, actually, because these architects, Norman Foster, Mario Botta, Enzo Piano, they're still alive, so they're still building.
But it's funny, you've put them You've placed them as if they do look like buildings, the books one on top of the other. And I must say, those two Norman Foster books, side by side, look like the World Trade Center.
From here, yes, from where we're seated, there's something strange. All these contemporary architects, with all these big books, they have the same format. They all compete to have silver or golden covers.
Or sort of a bluish steel color.
And Foster is now, you see, starting to do his volume 1 to 4, but he's redoing it in another format, and he has 1 and 4 ready at the moment. So there's definitely a sense of the importance of publications that has never stopped, and you can see it there.
Well, this is a fascinating connection that perhaps many of us wouldn't really make between the architect, the buildings that they design and eventually construct or not, and the use of books to capture all of their ideas. This is a fascinating aspect of architecture that perhaps many of us wouldn't have been aware of. Well, thank you very much for explaining it to us and taking us on a little verbal tour of the exhibit.
Thank you very much, Nigel.
I've been talking with Serge Belet, who is head of exhibitions at the Centre Canadien d'Architecture